I'm going to show you a checkmating attack in the endgame. This is a game that had lots of twists and turns, very interesting stuff. Remember, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, then do click on that subscribe button below and click on the bell for instant notifications for when we post a new video. Okay, so this game, Gukesh Domaraju against Yuri Kryvoruchko. This was played in the Sharjah Masters tournament, which is now over. Resulted in a 7-way tie. We had Ernesto Iñárkiev won it on tiebreak, but he was equal with Wang Hao, Kryvoruchko, Firouzja, Matlakov, Yakubayev and Mareko. A very, very close tournament, and well, some really interesting stuff, really interesting games. I want to show you a game actually played not by Iñárkiev, but Yuri Kryvoruchko with black, one of the eventual winners, against Domaraju Gukesh with white, who is a fantastic talent from India, became the second youngest grandmaster ever in history not so long ago. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing much more of him. Anyway, Gukesh has white in this position, and he's a piece down. But this is not so easy for Kryvoruchko to convert. You can see that's the extra knight. But black's pieces are very oddly placed here. You know, it would be nicer for black if that king and bishop were the other way round, and, you know, these pieces blocking the diagonal. In the meantime, white has potential counterplay here. So how does black try and convert this one, use the extra piece? Well, first of all, e4 from Kryvoruchko. I should say he's a very experienced grandmaster from Ukraine. Okay, so that's a good start, and also potentially gives the knight some support on d3. And a4. So this pawn starts off on its starting square, but this is really fast, and black has to make a decision what to do about this. Well, let's see. First of all, a check, and he brought the knight to d3. a5, that pawn is very quick. Now, normally in such circumstances, you would want to put the rook behind the pawn. But actually, because of the very awkward positioning of the pieces here, white can actually start attacking the pawns on the king side. And although this is, I would say, a safe way for black to play, I think the chances of winning this position after these exchanges, for example, this 4 against 2 position on the king side is very difficult in practice to win. Let's go back. So Kryvoruchko decides on a very daring policy here. Instead of trying to stop the pawn, he actually goes for an attack on white's king. So a knight check, and then rook d2. So he's allowing that pawn to go all the way. Now, again, if you put the rook behind, then white gets very nice counterplay against black's pawns on the king side. And, well, I think white could even suddenly be better in this kind of position. But Kryvoruchko has decided to just go for it. So he allows white's pawn to go through, but he's setting up mating threats on the king side. So, for example, if white queens straight away, then, well, we don't check here. But first of all, king g5, taking away the g4 square from white's king. And then we're threatening rook h2. And in fact, there's no decent defense for white in this position. The check on d5 doesn't help. If g4, we play like this. And bishop e5 mate. So Gukesh didn't make a queen, not immediately. He played bishop e2. Now that's a pretty extraordinary move. Great defense, so that he's ready to eliminate that knight. and then make a queen. So yeah, checking is not going to help here. The king comes up. So that bishop has to be eliminated. And only then he makes a queen. So what's the difference between this position and that previous variation? Well, Kryvoruchko plays in exactly the same way. Mate threatened on h2. The difference is that bishop has moved from b5, and that gives white's rook a square here. Rook b5 check. Pawn goes in the way. Now checking wouldn't help. The bishop just steps in the way. So how does white defend against rook takes h2? It's interesting. I mean, black has to be very careful here as well, because you know that queen can come over. There's only one move to get out, and that's g4. So if rook check, then the king steps to the side, and well, white is doing more than surviving. So for example, here, and bishop e5 check doesn't work. We can actually take that, and suddenly the game flips round. Check, and yeah, black is in massive trouble there. The king goes back, and another check there, and so on. We can take the rook or take the knight. Interesting stuff. So black has to be really careful here. Kryvoruchko took on e3. So now we have a material balance of bishop and knight, and a couple of pawns, and one pawn at the moment, against a queen. So, but both sides are attacking. It's a fascinating position. So the king here is in danger again. There's a threat of knight h4 discovered checkmate, or knight e1 discovered checkmate. So the king steps back. And now, very cool move. Just king takes pawn, eliminating that pawn, and actually the king's a little bit safer after that. So h3 check, king here, can still cover on the e5 square in case of a check. So the queen comes back, and now black wants to start attacking on the second rank. The queen comes back to cover that. But rook d3, a little gentle little shuffle, threatening rook d2 check. Now if black wins the queen for the rook, then that's going to be winning easily, material advantage. So rook d5 stops that. Bishop d4. And now it's looking desperate for white here. Now actually, well, I think Kryvoruchko misses a very strong chance here. He checked on h4, but in fact he could have taken that queen. So we have actually a rough material balance, rook against knight and two pawns, but actually black is winning very, very easily with f4, and that pawn is rolling through because a check, well, the king would just stand on e2, completely safe, and the f pawn rolls through. But instead of that, knight h4 plays by Kryvoruchko. King h2, well, I mean, maybe time pressure is involved. And here, rook g3 is also very strong. Let me just show that. Rook g3 followed by knight f3 check. But, well, he'd obviously just seen he could take this rook and thought, you know, didn't look for anything else basically, because he has rook and knight and two pawns against the queen. In fact, it's still not quite so clear. I think in practice this is very difficult for the queen to hold. There are sometimes stalemate tricks, and the queen is tricky. Knight g5 covers this square. Well, according to my machine, queen c3 is the best defense hit. But tricky to hold for white. h4 played, and things go rapidly downhill for Gukesh now. Perhaps he was in time pressure too. And although white is winning pawns, in fact, black achieves the perfect position with that knight. You can see covering the king, controlling this square, well, controls lots of key squares around the king, which prevents the queen checking. And then it's time to roll this pawn forward, and now it should be lost. Still very tricky. That's a nice move, just covering the c6 square. So Kryvoruchko is very careful at this point. e2. If the king goes back here, then obviously rook d1 is mate, so the king steps to the side. The queen is preventing the check, preventing promotion, so the king comes up. Still threatening this, and queen a6 pins. So still a few little difficulties. King g2, very nice, threatening promotion, and the queen can't check on g6 because of that wonderful knight on f4. And little by little Kryvoruchko gets in, so the knight covers the queening square. And the king finds safety. And finally we get a queen, and in this position, if queen takes rook, we've got knight b4 check, forking king and queen. So that is the end of that. And in this position, Gukesh decided enough was enough. And yes, that is the end, of course. If there's a check here, then we can exchange queens straight away. And rook and knight is good enough. An exciting game. I think what I was impressed by is that instead of trying to sort of hold on to the material, I think Kryvoruchko played very ambitiously. I think there's a tendency when we win material, in this case an extra piece, that we try to hang on to it at all costs. But actually Kryvoruchko was still very bold and very brave in going for this checkmating attack. Hope you enjoyed that, and well, I'm sure I'll be featuring the loser of this game, Gukesh, in later games. Watch out for that name. He is very, very good. Thanks for watching.